All right, welcome to the Sonoran Sky Podcast. I'm meteorologist Pete Mangione. We have a very exciting topic today. We are going to talk about lightning, and we're going to bring in an expert on all things lightning. His name is Ron Hawley. Ron, thanks so much for joining us on the Sonoran Sky Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I was reading your profiles online, and it seems like you've had about 17 to 18 different jobs. Tell us how you got started in studying lightning and what your positions were and what they are currently.
I started working for the Weather Service Research Labs way back, and my first supervisor was Dr. Joanne Simpson, who became the first woman president of the American Meteorological Society. She had been studying clouds over the Pacific because during World War II, nobody understood what was going on over the Pacific. So she was studying clouds. I came on to work for her. He sent me out studying more clouds and got into thunderstorms and so on. And the various twists and turns, I touched base on convection, thunderstorms, cumulonimbus. And then along in the early 80s came lightning detection. Lightning detection was invented at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. And when you see lightning on your screens and on television, on the apps and so on, it all goes back to that basic invention, literally invention at the University of Arizona for real-time lightning. So anyway, that's been my path somewhat along the way. And I'm also working a lot on lightning safety all over the world, particularly in Africa. So yeah. Touch base a lot of places.
And you wrote a book about lightning, correct?
Yes, I did. I co-authored a book about lightning only in Arizona and only lightning.
What is so unique about Arizona lightning? Because we get pictures sent to us all the time during thunderstorms. There does seem to be something magical about the way it looks in the state.
Well, we came up, my co-author and I, Dila Zhang, we came up with a term that Arizona is the lightning photography capital of the United States. I don't think there's any question about that. It may be of the world. Why is that? We have high cloud bases, so you can see the channel coming down like in the background on me from high elevations all the way down to the ground. You have sunsets and colorful skies and mountains, auroras, you have all sorts of things. So there's just more going on here than in a picture than almost anywhere else in the country.
And I hope I'm saying this correctly. You worked at an organization called Vaisala for a few years, which specializes in lightning detection. Can you kind of explain what that is, Vaisala?
Vaisala,
thank you.
Vaisala, it's a company from Finland. It's Vaisala company. Anyway, yeah, I consulted with them after I left the Weather Service Research Labs, and they took over the invention at the University of Arizona and turned it into a business and still sells data to the Weather Service and the Air Force and military and TV stations and insurance companies and firefighters and all sorts of things. So I was involved in a lot of those applications, but it all came back to that invention at the university here.
And, we were talking about lightning detection. How has lightning detection changed over the years? What was it like when it started, and what is it like now?
Well, it started, I went back into it in our book, and it started in Alaska with a couple of really basic antennas, and it used angles for triangulation. And it was very popular because it avoided having a lot of fire weather people looking for fires, flying in planes and spotters and all that. That's pretty much gone because of lightning detection. So anyway, because of that, there was a tremendous push to put that in the Western US in the 80s, and then when it covered the whole country. So the accuracy back then was 3 or 4 miles. Now it's down to 50 yards. It's just amazing. And 99% of all lightning is detected by that network. National Lightning Detection Network, I like to call it.
So those of us that have the apps on our phones that alert people if there's lightning nearby or show you the little lightning bolt on the screen, that is essentially all coming from mostly the same place, the same systems?
It started out there. There have been some competitors that have come along, but I'd like to think the National Lightning Detection Network from Vizsla is still the gold standard. And networks like that have been put in 20 or 30 countries around the world by various agencies, military, forest fire fighting, and so on.
And do these generally detect cloud to ground, cloud to cloud, or both types of lightning?
They detect both. The accuracy and so on efficiency of the cloud to ground is very, very high. It also detects in-cloud lightning is probably 3 to 5, sometimes 10 times as many flashes in cloud as there are on the ground. And in terms of lightning safety, the lightning that's in cloud is just as important to pay attention to in terms of being alert as it is for the cloud to ground.
And last year there was something called a mega flash that made the news. Tell me about what that means. What's that all about?
Yeah, I'm a co-author on that. There's been several studies like that over the years. The mega flash was 700 miles long, I think it was. It started in southern Texas and went all the way across up into Kansas, I think it was. And it lasted quite a few seconds. It wasn't just by itself. It was embedded with a big squall line that sometimes you see in the evening, extends from the southern plains all the way up to the northern plains and off toward the Mississippi River. So there's been some new techniques with ground-based networks and also from satellite networks that will connect and stitch together all these different detections. And there was no question that it was one continuous event. It was not broken up. Really amazing.
Interesting. I'm curious, when you personally have plans outside, how do you handle lightning risk? I mean, I'm just curious what the expert about lightning might handle the risk of lightning when you have plans to be outside. Do you look at the forecast? Do you use apps? Do you stay away from the outdoors if there's even a 10% chance of storms? How do you handle that?
Well, I'm very careful, of course, but the thing is that I'm pretty well aware of cloud types, and I can tell pretty much whether that cloud is going to produce something. And I also just am cautious. I don't go out when it's obviously going to develop, and I don't go back outside until it's over. We have a phrase: when thunder roars, go indoors. That's the easiest thing to remember. Not if, but go. When you hear thunder, it's close enough to be to produce a flash in the next event.
And I was reading that you've worked in labs all over the country: Norman, Oklahoma, Boulder, Colorado, Coral Gables, Florida, Silver Spring, Maryland. Is there anything unique about those locations in terms of lightning? Did you notice the lightning was particularly bad in one of those locations since you have so much experience working around the country?
Well, it really wasn't the lightning that brought me there. I think I did the trifecta of the NOAA research labs: Miami, Boulder, and Norman. I mean, those are the three centers. Miami is more in tropical meteorology. The lightning detection hadn't been invented yet. I was in Boulder, and that's a very large research labs facility. And several of us became almost completely involved in applications of the real-time lightning data. And then in Norman, of course, is tornadoes and radar, and lightning was pretty well integrated in with all the studies there too. So anyway, I did the trifecta. DC was the first year when I came to work for NOAA because it's NOAA headquarters, but that wasn't very appealing. Too much bureaucracy.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you so much for being on the Sonoran Sky Podcast and teaching us all about lightning. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Can I put up the picture of the book?
Go for it.
There it is.
Yeah, so for those of you listening, you won't be able to see this, obviously, but for those of you watching on YouTube, his book cover, Flashes of Brilliance, there it is. And you can obviously learn all about Arizona lightning and some of the beautiful, beautiful, magical sights it creates here in Arizona. Thanks so much, Ron.
All right. Nice talking to you.
Thank you. All right, so we are now going to bring in a second guest. Obviously, lightning safety is a huge issue for people that have plans outside, especially if you're heading out in more rural areas in Arizona's wilderness. So I want to bring in Olivia Holderness from Maricopa County. She's a Maricopa County Interpretive Ranger. Olivia, thanks so much for being on the Sonoran Sky Podcast.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here, Pete.
Well, okay, so I know we talked to you last year during our monsoon special about lightning safety.
hmm
Let's talk about boating, because I think this is always an issue that's worth discussing, especially as we head into some of the warmer months. Let's talk about preventing being on a boat during a storm in the first place. What can you do to make sure this isn't happening to you?
Yeah, so the first thing then we tell people this if they're boating, hiking, anything regarding recreating outside, the first thing that you need to do is even before you leave the house, and it's check the weather, which sounds super easy and simple. And like, of course, you're going to check the weather, but a lot of times our weather moves very fast and changes very quickly. So it's important to keep updated throughout the day, whether you're going to be on the water or on land, but especially when you're going to be on water. So checking the weather. And then once you get to wherever you're going to be recreating, like a lake, which in Arizona, that's the main case, a lake. Usually those lakes have precautions in order of they'll tell you if there's high winds coming, if there's going to be storms. There's usually signs or somebody there that is going to say, hey, let's keep an eye on this just so you know this might happen.
And okay, so let's say, you just don't pay attention to the forecast is
Mhm.
wrong, and you end up out on the water, you're out in the middle of the lake or the reservoir, and the clouds and the storm starts to roll in. What should you do?
Yeah, so one of the most common things that people do is immediately all head for the docks. And if you're close enough to the dock, that's a great option. But if you're in the middle of the lake, a couple miles out, it might not be the best option because you might not be able to get to the dock in the correct amount of time where everybody's going to be going there at the same time, and then you're all going to end up kind of piled up, which we've seen before at Lake Pleasant and other lakes as well. So if you're out there and you don't have the opportunity to head back to the shore, it's really important that you find like a cove or somewhere that has a little bit of blockade that you can just kind of anchor down and wait out at least for a little bit of what the storm is.
And I remember when we interviewed you last year, you said something really interesting about a
Mhm.
situation when, hey, you're on a boat, lightning is starting to get really, really close. The position you should maybe head to on the boat might depend on what the boat is made of, correct?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's, of course, many different types of boats. A lot of people end up having metal or aluminum kind of made boats. Those are honestly going to be some of the safest boats, which sounds kind of interesting because metal usually attracts lightning, but usually our metal boats are a bit safer during lightning because the aluminum or steel holes that they're made of have an automatic grounding system. So in the case that a lightning strike or gets close to you, then that current is kind of able to be grounded and it reduces the risk of electrification. Um, if that is the case, or any boat in general, your main thing is going to be getting as close to the bottom of the boat as you can. So laying down flat, covering your head if it's that close, taking down any things that are higher up on your boat, like sails, things like that. If your boat is not metal and it's wooden, then just kind of staying in the middle of the boat and making sure that you're not near the edges or trying to get as far away from the water as you can be.
Interesting. And let's say you are not on a boat, you are just on a hike and you're kind of out on your own and there is not a shelter nearby and the lightning is coming in quickly. Should you get down on the ground? Should you run? I mean, I hear all kinds of things about what you should do when
Yeah.
lightning approaches, but I think it's important for people to sort of understand what you should actually be doing versus some of the myths that we
Mhm.
hear.
Yeah, there's lots of different things that people say that you should do. if you're in the case where you can get close to the trailhead back to your car, that's great. Do that as fast as you can. But if it's really close, there's a certain position that typically we recommend that people take. And it's kind of you're kneel down, the balls of your feet are the only part of your body that's touching the ground. So your heels are up, you're kind of holding your knees together, and your head is in between or on top of your knees. So getting as close to the ground as you can. It's also important that you're not next to like a tree, a saguaro, anything that's really tall, because tall things tend to be where lightning finds its place because it's the closest to the clouds.
For sure. And that's a great point you made about the saguaros or the trees, especially if the lightning is accompanied with rain. That might be the first thing people try to do, right? Is use a tree or a saguaro as a little bit of protection.
Right. Yeah. So it's great that you go under a tree if you're just trying to avoid the rain. But if there's lightning or even thunder, because usually during our monsoon seasons, those things tend to go hand in hand. Not always, but when they do, you definitely don't want to be near anything that can be considered a conductor. So any wood, any tall, and most of our plants here aren't super tall, which works out in most of those situations. So as long as you're not standing right next to one, then you're in a pretty spot. You're in a pretty good spot.
And it's probably quite common for people that go out on a hike that rely on their phones for weather apps and updates. What should you do, or can you prepare for a situation where your cell phone signal might not be very good?
Yeah, so we usually recommend to people, especially if they're going to be doing a longer hike or one with elevation, to have some sort of alternative to your phone, even if it's a clear day, because things move fast and it's good to have extra maps, paper. It's good to have a different type of weather device. So there's different things that you can carry. And if you're an avid hiker, might be willing to look into those extra things. I know some people in our department have it tells you, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it tells you exactly what the charge in the air is. So you can kind of get an idea if something is close by and your phone's not working. It'll kind of let you know, hey, it's seeming like it might get a little bit worse. So kind of having other things beside your phone. And we live in a day and age where phones are, of course, what you're going to always bring, and that's great. But it's important to also have other things because our phones aren't always reliable, especially out in parks and in natural areas where there's maybe not any cell towers.
That's a great point. And, you've made a good point about having people take responsibility for themselves and to be weather aware and look at the weather forecast. In addition, some of the outdoor areas in Maricopa County, are there signs or alerts that people might want to pay attention to if bad weather is coming? Like if you're heading out to the lake, is it possible there might be a sign or some kind of marker saying, hey, be careful, there might be bad weather coming today?
Yeah, our lake specifically, we have a kind of like a screen at the beginning of every lane. So where you kind of put your boats in when you come back, and when the wind gets to a certain speed, it'll tell you high winds, and that is a sign to let you know maybe it's not a great idea to go out on the water right now because the high winds can make it harder to boat, make it harder to keep yourself stable on the water, but also the winds might turn into something else, like a storm. And those can be seen, the main signs at the docks. But if you're on the water already and things change, then we do have wind alerts that are pretty tall, and there's a couple around the lake. So no matter where you are, you'd be in a spot to see one. And they'll flash a certain color and they'll spin, and it lets you know that the wind has gotten to a certain speed that maybe it's time to think about coming back in or finding somewhere if it's moving fast, somewhere that you can kind of hide out.
And Olivia, finally, I imagine doing the job that you do, you must have a passion for the outdoors and the weather. Are you kind of fascinated when weather changes come rolling in and Do you enjoy, as long as you stay safe, looking at storms and looking at the different weather changes in the outdoors?
Yeah, I do. And one of my favorite things about the desert is when you first smell the rain, right? You smell that specific smell that everyone associates with it, from our creosote. And at that point, then I'm like, this is exciting. We're going to get some rain. Our plants are going to get greener. And I love watching the lightning as much as everyone else. But when I do watch lightning, it's either from a car, a building, or somewhere where I know that if I need to, I can get inside very quickly. I'm never watching from a roof or anything like that. It's a beautiful thing to watch, and I encourage people to watch it, but to do it safely.
Well, Olivia, it sounds like you found the right career.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being on the Sonoran Sky Podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Pete.
All right, have a great day. And that's going to do it for this episode here. You can obviously eventually find this on YouTube and learn all about lightning safety. And we will see you next time on the Sonoran Sky Podcast.